We are now.
Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to the July 28th edition of the Community Weekly Call. I hope everyone is doing okay. If you have not added yourself to the list of attendees, please do so. Let us know how you're doing. Matt Snell, did you happen to see the Unsolved Mysteries episode about the UFOs? It was really good.
No, I haven't. I've just been keeping up with all the news about it, and then the new one.
Highly recommend. You should go look at that if you have. I think it's on Netflix. Unsolved
Sweet.
Mystery. Pretty good. It will certainly leave you thinking. Okay, so let's jump in to the agenda. I lumped these into three kind of broader categories: items from last week that we want to wrap up, new stuff, and then our weekly usual update kind of stuff. So the first one was we had been speaking about the general documentation for CHAOSS, the CHAOSS project as a whole, and the idea that maybe we needed a glossary to just define some more ambiguous terms like review. But then after the discussion, we decided that we would just keep that with the evolution group. Is that where it came from? I think it was evolution.
Yeah.
So Sean and Daniel had an action item to update the metrics. So let's just check in with either of those people to see if they have done that.
The evolution group meets for the first time since that meeting. I believe it's tomorrow.
Okay, fair enough.
So, we're off the hook. We haven't even not done anything yet because we've not had a meeting. So it'll be next week if we're not done that we won't have done anything.
There you go. The best action items are the items you can't actually action yet. Yeah. So exactly. Cool. Okay. And then the second one was we were trying to do a survey with the to-do group on for their I guess I'm not sure if it's open. I don't know if we've even defined that yet. And Matt, you can jump in here, but sending out an open source survey to projects around their attitudes around metrics and things like that. We had a list of people who were interested in that from last time. I did not have contact information for everyone on that list. So here's the link. If you are interested, feel free to jump in. I just started super early, just a doc to get us started as a launching off place. And I just threw my notes and my brain dump in there. So feel free to jump in and we would probably also want to invite Chris into that as well, which I can do just to get his thoughts too, to make sure we're all on the same page and to get it working. So I don't know if we want to talk about that anymore here, or if we want to just keep it all async and do it offline. If anybody has questions, whatever y'all think.
Now that I've been able to open the link, not your fault, but the browser was giving me crap.
So one of the questions that I have on this survey is the hope of the goal of the data. So is the data to help inform the development of more metrics or composite metrics? Is it to help folks like at Augur and Grimoire Lab think about these are the important visuals to show, like we already have the metrics for these, but these are the ones that really should be advanced? Is it we don't know what we plan on using the data for? That might help a little bit.
My personal feeling is yes to all of those things. I think it will. I think that's what Chris was kind of going towards. Is let's just get some broader insight as to what people think about these, where they are right now, kind of just a pulse. That was kind of my interpretation of what he was saying, but I could be completely wrong because that does happen from time to time. I know it's rare, but it does happen that I would be wrong. So I guess we can ask Chris what he wants to get out of it. I think for us, it would be great to have insight in what you just said, Matt, all of those things.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's always good to have someone who can tell us what problems they're trying to solve right now, and to see and use that to guide what metrics we develop and what tools we build. So I think we have a lot of good input within CHAOSS, but certainly this prevents us from becoming insular. And I think that's a very good thing.
Matt, did you drop those questions in the doc? If you didn't, you feel free to do so, of just like possible goals. Yeah.
And then how much, my other question was, how much like demographic information do we want? I know you normally want that stuff, but my concern is that if everybody has different demographic information, I don't know, the demographic information is not always mapped to the answers that they provide. So like each demographic has a different set of answers. And then we're like, we have 20 different demographics that have responded to this survey, and we have 20 different responses. Does that get us anywhere? These are just things I was thinking about.
Are you talking about project demographics or individual demographics?
The project.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something that we can kind of, suss out a little bit, because I think it would be interesting to see, if, project age, like what do older projects consider important versus new projects, or at least, what they're thinking right now. And also, size of project, there's a few different things we could ask to see if there are any correlations, with data or patterns that we can track. But I don't know, I don't know how Chris feels about that either. So
maybe
I would like to see it on there. Yeah, but.
Yeah, I would like to see it too. So maybe this is for Don, because you're on the to-do group. So do the folks on the to-do group, is there a kind of a consistent way that you think about projects? Is it just all over the place, like 20 different orgs, 20 different ways to think about it?
Yeah, I think it varies a lot because the to-do group has very different sorts of open source program offices within it. So there are, VMware, of course. We have loads of open source projects ourselves. We contribute to a lot of upstream projects. You have kind of end users where, it's people like Comcast, for example, who aren't necessarily technology companies, but they have a lot of technology, and so you have people like that. Yeah, and it's, kind of smaller open source program offices, larger ones, I think. And I think each of us think a little bit differently about how we handle running the open source program offices and the types of projects that we're involved in. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. So do you think if we, in a survey, if we're asking these types of demographic information, like information about the organizations and the projects that they're interested in, that I suppose there's a possibility that we're going to get different metrics that are indicative of how they observe these different kind of corners of their world. So I don't know if you have thoughts, or if anybody has thoughts, like how we would overcome the survey development such that we don't have, if it's sent out to the to-do group, that we have 20 different profiles of people, I guess, as identified through their demographics.
I guess from my perspective, if we just get 20 people from the to-do group who are working on these kinds of problems, that's probably not a sufficient sample for the demographics to mean anything. I think it's a gap analysis between what some folks are interested in and what we're doing. And I'm not sure demographics are actually a part of that. We're not, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to say that they're not important, but I'm trying to say any perspective that shows that there's some gap between a large number of people in the to-do group and something that we're doing, like we're not doing something, or we're not looking in an area that they're really concerned about. I think that would be interesting, irrespective of the demographics. And if
it would be.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were done.
You go ahead.
What I was just gonna say was it might be worth asking a couple of demographics questions. I certainly wouldn't go overboard, but I think something like company size, for example, could have a big impact on the data. So I would think about which demographics questions are likely to, to have some sort of a big impact, and just ask a few.
Okay. So in that case, it would kind of be like coarse-grained demographics, but it would help orient people to the results a little bit. Is that kind of the thinking? Okay.
Yeah, I think company size is a good
Cool.
one. And
maybe that's already in there.
One or two small things, but
okay. I'm too slow. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else have thoughts on that?
I have
Survey?
one thought. It's like, are we trying to identify what kind of metrics they are looking for, and then we align it to the, okay, we have a different focus areas like value, risk, and then we align it to them, or we, from each group, we ask certain kind of metrics they are interested in, like how we are going to match that thing. Is it like they are interested in the organizational perspective, or more on the risk side, or on the how projects evolve? Like to get a feel that where they are more focused and how we can like synergize our work in that area.
I think that's a great question. I think from my point of view, I think we wanted to kind of leave it a little more open-ended and just see what we get back. I don't know that we would change anything we're doing as far as the structure, unless there's like a huge blind spot that we've never thought of before, that maybe there would be another working group. But I think it's just mostly to just see if, you know, if what we're doing makes sense, and what, if there are places where we can fill in the gaps of what people are looking for. And I think that's what you're asking, like.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so if anybody else has any comments or ideas or things that they think should be included in that survey, or concerns about it, anything like that, feel free to jump in that doc and just drop your comments, whatever. It's completely open. So
Hey, I have a question. Sorry for jumping in late, or maybe you already talked about it. So my understanding is this CHAOSS to-do group survey is separate from the to-do group survey they do, right?
yeah, I think that's
Okay.
true.
I think that, yeah, I think that's correct.
Okay, I was just thinking if we ask things like demographics and so on, if we could sneak in a couple questions with their regular survey, we could avoid survey fatigue for the to-do group members. But I think they just ran their survey, so we would have to wait till next year.
Yeah, the survey just finished, and it's a survey that's been running for a number of years, so I think that they have a fair bit of consistency, because it's done, the new stack does the data analysis. I know VMware, we sponsor it, so we pay for something associated with it. I'm not sure exactly how that works.
Okay, just wanted
John,
to
that brings up
clarify that.
that brings up a good point, and maybe you have some insight into this. Is when do you think would be a good time to send this survey out, given what Georg just said about the survey fatigue and just, you know, people like, how long do you think we should wait, I guess, is the question, if you have any thoughts of that.
I think it wouldn't hurt to wait a month or two. The other thing that might be interesting is that I think, so they presented some of the preliminary results from the new stack survey at the OSSNA. I think they usually present a more detailed deep dive once they've done more of the analysis at OSS EU. But it might be worth waiting until after the final results have come out from the new stack survey, because it might, I don't know, influence some of what we ask. There might be some things that come out of that survey that are interesting that we want to dig into a little more.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Thank you, Don. I put that in the doc too, just so we kind of have that reference for later.
We might want to reach out to Lawrence. I was just going back to the survey, and I can't see it. It's closed. And it would probably be a really good idea waiting for Don's points, but just I'd like to see the questions in the new stack survey. I didn't see those, or I didn't look at them in a lot of detail.
That was someone I did not have contact information for. So if someone
Okay.
does.
I do.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for that. Okay, what's next? Oh, Sean, do you want to talk about the Augur community reports you just released? If you don't,
Yep.
that's fine, but
Yeah,
that might be interesting.
released them last week, I guess, but then we released them really for real today because I wanted to test them. And so what they actually include access to a small read-only Augur database that contains all the CHAOSS project organization data and lets you sort of play with them. They do deep analysis of new contributors and pull request responsiveness. So real keen to keep building these kinds of reports, and we welcome pull requests. Even if they're not finished, we can sort of make them standard and make sure they work inside the environment that we use. Appreciate anybody that wants to give it a try and let us know if they have any problems. I personally did try to test the crap out of it before I put it out in the world, so excited to hear what people think.
And Sean, admittedly, I've not had a chance to look at that in detail. Are there like clear docs on how one would go about testing it and diving in there, I assume?
There's a README, and it does assume a certain amount of knowledge of how to run Jupyter Hub notebooks. But there's a run menu item, and you can just run all cells with the defaults, and you should see some data and some visualizations. There's one tricky part that I kind of explained. If you want to write the visualizations out, you have to install this thing called Gecko driver, which is basically a behind-the-scenes web browser, so that it can render the PNG to a file. Otherwise, it'll just render it to your screen, and you can download it as a file. But I really don't like hitting download on 20 files. I'd rather just have them all spit somewhere. It's personal
Cool. Does
preference.
anybody have anything for Sean? Any questions about it? Or
I have a comment.
Go for it.
So we're always talking about ways that we can get the CHAOSS work in front of people, right? So how do we get the awesome work that's being done in all the working groups and in the software out into people's hands in ways that can make meaningful impacts? And it's looking like the Jupyter Hub notebooks they're hitting a profile of person that really likes them. I don't know how to say it otherwise, but they seem like it's a really good way of sharing the information that's available kind of from the project. So that was just a comment I wanted to make.
Matt, is that a detriment then to the
No,
thing, or is that a plus? Okay.
It's a super plus. Like just giving people like a link to the Augur repo, like maybe that's not like the best way to not knocking on the Augur repo, Sean, but like it's a lot, or the Grimoire Lab repo. I mean, just like kind of flipping people like a repo URL is not knock yourself out. But the Jupyter Hub notebooks appear to be technical enough that if people want to make modifications and kind of play with it, they provide that, but they're also abstracted enough that you can get at a lot of really good information without getting into the full nuts and bolts of the technologies. That's kind of, and it seems like there's a group of people, or there are people, I shouldn't say a group of people, there are people who really like that spot. And other people might like other spots, but there seems to be a group of folks that like that a lot, which is cool.
Yeah, I'm one of them. I'm a huge fan of like Jupyter notebooks. Just make my somewhat pathetic Pythoning just feel like I actually have a superpower, and I get to basically follow Sean's. I get a free lecture from Sean with the markdown in between, so I think that's a bonus as well.
A free lecture from Sean.
Yeah.
By the way, I made a point. I made a point in the README that the work is Andrew Brain and Gabe Himes. It looks like I made a giant commit and it was all me, but I actually did relatively little of the work. I
Very
was moved into
professorial
chaos.
of you to to get that. So I saw two repos were updated recently: the community reports one and the Augur one. So
Yeah.
Sean, what would be helpful for us to get hands-on with? Is it both? Is it one notebook in particular?
I think there's two notebooks in the templates folder, and they're actually kind of exactly the same notebooks in the chaos examples folder, just so that right eventually they'll be a little bit different in terms of what repos they look at, but right now they're exactly the same. And I explained that the aim would be copy templates to your own folder for whatever you're looking at, and put your own database credentials in the config file and go to town. But I think for now, just experimenting with them and seeing, offering critiques of them, identifying anything that's confusing about the installation. I mean, I spent a lot of time trying to make sure it was right, but I know the first person that tries to run it is going to have a problem I didn't encounter. So
always.
Yeah, that's I think Augur is always. Augur's been updated quite a bit recently, mostly because it's we've got Google Summer of Code students, and so I'm releasing almost every week updates from them, little fixes. So,
Sean, is there a good link to drop in the meeting notes here? Or should we just check here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll give you the links. I'll put them in the notes.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anyone have anything else for Sean on this? Questions, comments?
Did I get disconnected or Elizabeth? What happened? Zoom.
Perfect.
Okay. I lost your audio for a minute. I don't know if I was the only one.
Oh, it was probably me. I probably hit mute.
Okay.
So I'm smart that way. Okay, great. So yeah, so it looks like we're good on that. Let's go to the next thing, which is just the CHAOSS and the LF community reports that we are going to provide to whoever would like to get one. I don't know who wants to, Matt, Sean, or I can give a quick update on that. There isn't a ton, just, you know, kind of where we are.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So really we, I don't remember where we were at this point last week, but we're pretty set on the form that people will fill out to request a report. We have that pretty much finalized. We have made awesome progress on what metrics we think we want to add. We talked a lot about that last week. And so I think we're getting there. Like we're pretty close to launching this thing. And I don't know, Matt, Sean, do we have a date in mind that we were trying to get this out?
No.
I think we've given the Linux Foundation kind of a green light to move, put it once they have it available, then we can put it on our website and promote it. I think that's the chain of events. Like,
yeah.
We finalized what it is, and then there's a little bit of work that they're going to do to finalize it, and whatever they do there.
And then Kevin will put it in the website for people to fill out.
Yeah. And somebody,
so
maybe you'll put it in the newsletter, and I'll tweet it and see if I can get some retweets from people.
I'll retweet you, Sean.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Kevin, did Annie reach out to you just with respect to the website?
No, I have not heard anything from Annie.
Okay. Also, in terms of timeline, right, we have been working with the LF. So this was part of the project, right, of trying to help as the LF kind of goes through some changes with the COVID and events, trying to kind of work with them in that regard. So I think we are working with Annie for 2 months. So just in terms of time frame, I think we're probably approaching near the end of the 2 months, but I think most everything is done. And I'm guessing if we need small things done or questions answered, it's not like we are no longer on their radar.
Yeah.
So we co-opted Dawn, don't get mad. We co-opted a little bit of a common meeting right at the beginning to talk about the report. And so we're going to limit it to 10 repositories from people. So whether it's 10 specified repositories or the 10 most recently contributed to a repository. So if somebody just says, here's an org, and that org has 500 repos, we're only going to do 10. So we do have limits on how much information we will provide. The report is going to include 2 composite metrics from Augur and 2 composite metrics from Grimoire Lab as a way to kind of showcase the tools in the CHAOSS project. And so it's really up to the folks at Augur, Sean, to figure out what those 2 will be.
We have newcomers and pull requests ready to go.
Yep. And then looking kind of at you, Georg.
I still owe you an email on the mailing list about this.
Yep. So just trying to figure out kind of what those, it would be a grand total of 4 kind of composite metrics, not the atomic metrics, but like a composite metric being something along the lines of pull requests. And we can kind of, this visual would show kind of a variety of pieces of information regarding pull requests or a variety of pieces of information regarding issues. And those visuals are comprised of a bunch of atomic metrics that the CHAOSS community has defined. So yeah, Georg sent me an email. So
I'm sure 2020 is the year we should start using the word atomic. Sorry.
So that's it.
Does anybody have any questions or any comments about this? Or they have no idea what we're talking about at all, and we can explain it a little bit if you have no idea.
I'm going to say
I guess we're good.
Thank you
go ahead.
for working through this, for making this happen. There's probably a lot more work in the back end that we don't all know about.
I'm pretty excited about this. This is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, I think it is very cool.
You know, just as a thought, something we didn't discuss yet on that is what we do with the results. If they say, yes, you can post them somewhere. We didn't really talk through that process of where they would go on the site or separate or like what we will do with that. So that's something that we need to figure out.
Yeah, maybe I'll look at kind of Kevin just to think through that. So Kevin, the idea would be is an organization could say, sure, when you produce the community reports, send them back to us, obviously, but you can also post them publicly for others to take a look at. And so if they say yes to posting them publicly, where do we place those? And how do we make them accessible to folks?
Yep, I would assume we want to place those as close to possible, as close to the form to request those, right? So you can see examples of previous community reports. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so that's probably a new navigation tab.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Oh, let me write that in the notes, or someone wants to write that in the notes. Okay, so the next thing is the D&I within the CHAOSS project. Matt, do you want to talk about that? Matt G?
Yeah, yep. So I'll talk about that. So we're going to have an opportunity to, over the course of the next year, reflect on D&I within the CHAOSS project itself. So this came up in the D&I call last week. So this is a support from the Ford Foundation, who is really asking us to take a look at our own D&I within the project in an effort to help other organizations thoughtfully reflect on the D&I in their projects. And so not only learning for ourselves, but learning in a way to help others down the road. So I'm going to put this out here. It's not happening today, but this is something that I'm pretty excited about. I think it's always good to kind of do some self-reflection. Particularly, D&I is a critically important part of the CHAOSS project. So we talk a lot about it and about how others should think about D&I. And so I think it's really a great opportunity to look internally as well. So I'd like to thank the Ford Foundation for that as well. So if anybody has questions, you can ask, but it's about like that.
About what is.
So do we start a working group for this, or what's the next step?
So I don't think so. But we could. I don't know. Seeing as how we haven't done this, what'll end up, I think part of the funding is going to be supporting an advisory group over the course of the year, which would kind of reflect on the way work is done in the CHAOSS project, the way that operations are handled in the project, but an advisory group of folks that are considerably more skilled at this type of reflection than I might be or others might be. So so this advisory group would really work within the project, doing the reflection and also working with the community to identify areas of improvement. But like any organizational change, right, we have to be able to map the recommendations towards a path forward on those recommendations, right? So if we're doing A and a recommendation is to do B, I think we have to be thoughtful as to how that transition occurs. So there has to be, I'm guessing, some group internally too to help kind of map what those recommendations would be, just based on your comment. I hadn't honestly really thought about this, but how to map those recommendations into solutions that are positive for the project. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Georg, but.
Well, I was just thinking about how others are doing it. And I know that in some communities, there are dedicated groups that come up with recommendations and then work with everyone to facilitate that change. But I think CHAOSS itself is small enough that we can probably do it here on this call. And if we see the need that we need a dedicated group, we can always start that.
Do that cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay. Any other questions that I might not have answers to?
Yeah, go ahead and I don't have any more questions. I knew all about this.
Just for the record, I'm super excited about this as well. I think it will be awesome, and I think it will make us look, or I shouldn't say look, it will help us solidify our place as kind of leaders in this space. And I think it will also help us identify any gaps in our metrics that we look at, especially around D&I. So I think it's just a win all the way around, and I think it's just going to make us stronger, better, more awesome than we already are. So I'm really, really excited about it as well. And to have some a group like the Ford Foundation supporting that, like, that's really great. So yeah, very exciting. Okay, I guess if there's nothing else on that, let's go on to the next thing, which is the new stuff. And the first one is the SCMS pilot program. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because I know we're kind of running short on time. I want to make sure we have time for everything. But so the SCMS is the social currency metric system. And it's basically just analyzing the sentiment around a community and around a project. So we are going to be doing that internally with the CHAOSS project. That is Venya and Dylan are helping run that with one of our students, Ria, who is doing an amazing, awesome, fantastic job on that. It's really cool. So basically what it boils down to is you just aggregate all of the communications around your project. So from different channels, like whether it be GitHub or Twitter or IRC or mailing lists or whatever it is, and you aggregate all of that, and then you just assign tags and categorize those comments, and then you give them different weights to say, you know, like this one wasn't really that relevant, or this one is super relevant to what we're doing. And then you can run reports, and you can look at a dashboard that kind of helps you get a little more context around how people perceive your project and what their experiences are, and if they're good or bad, or where there's areas for improvement. So it's a really cool system that we're just piloting for them. I think the Mautic community is next. So what we're the pilot, so yay. So it's very early in the process. We're going to be doing some of the initial work. We just got it set up like this week. I talked to Ria this morning. So it's super new, but it's really cool, and we'll be giving updates on that as we go if anyone's interested. We're going to give updates whether you're interested or not, actually. So yeah, so you'll get them here. But yeah, it's really cool. I'm excited about that. It's really neat. Does anybody have any questions about that I may or may not answer? I don't know.
I just want to say that's a really cool project. Thank you for doing this, because this SCMS is one of the most discussed metrics because it's not entirely clear. And so I think applying it to ourselves will give us some clarity to move forward on that metric in the future.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So yeah, we'll be able to kind of put it to the test before we can put it out into the world. But I think it's really cool. It's a fun project.
I think there's the value working group is this Thursday, right? Because Common, right? And so I think there's some outstanding questions. I know you're talking about like the pilot program and the metric itself. And
I made a bunch of comments yesterday.
Yeah.
And I have some concerns about making sure that what we're doing here is still open source. And some other suggestions about organization.
So
I think they're answerable. I mean, I think they're questions that we just ask and see what the answer is.
So it'd be great if we could talk about those in the value working group. And I do think one of the points that you had brought up, Sean, too, was the SCMS metric is, and I think Guillermo, you were alluding to this, that it's not an atomic metric. It's a collection of many metrics, and it's the only metric that we currently have, as far as I know, that kind of follows, like it's a collection.
Yeah,
and versus every other metric is atomic.
In my review, I think I identified the 8 to 10 atomic metrics that appear to underlie it, and I think if we just, like, one of the things would be just to enumerate what those are. Mm-hmm. That these are atomic metrics that will be developed. Another question I had is, I think as a community, that one of the goals of building metrics is that we have standard definitions of what a thing is. And some pieces of the SCMS metric make data part of that standard. And so you can't have a standard way of thinking about the SCMS measure unless there's some kind of set of standard coded reference data that you're going to use to generate things like sentiment. And so it's not only about software. There's also, I think, if we're creating standard metrics, then I think that requires some open sourcing of some data as well in this case. Which is another point I had. And my comments are long overdue. My comments are long overdue, and they are coming late. So I don't wish to cause any trouble. I recognize I came late to actually getting to my comments.
I was just going to say, to your point, Sean, I think that I agree that there should be some standardization, but I think the way it may work better if we leave a little more room for customization. The way, because just for as an example, and we don't have to go into this right now, but like the way you weigh something, you can weigh it a bunch of different ways. So like there's a scale of -3 to +3 is what we chose, but there's like 3 different ways you can do that. And you can also choose to weigh it based on relevance or based on emotion. So if it's like happy, you give it a +3. If it's, you know, I mean, so like there's some different ways you can interpret it the way you want to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that things like weights would be parameters like time period, but things like the codec for each of the atomic metrics, those are pieces of data that need to be out in the open if we're going to have a standard metric, in my opinion. But I agree, like weights, well, that's your implementation. That's how you decide to create weights.
Right, right. And I think even though like the codecs might even be a little bit customizable, because the way like you know, for instance, some of them are like customer service. Well, that would apply to, like, you might want to call it something different, or, you know, like that might be a company versus like a project. So I don't know. I mean, we can talk about this later, but I think that we might want to leave some room, is all I'm saying, is to, unlike others, we might want to leave a little bit of room for some customization, just so people can use the data the best that they want.
So, yeah, and I think the question we just have to ask ourselves is, are we okay putting a metric into the world where you're not really creating a standard definition of something and I think the metric could be actually broken. There are some pieces of it, and this is all in my comments, that are clearly atomic metrics, I think, anyway, if I read it correctly. And there are other parts of it that are process, and there are other parts of it that are data. Like, is somebody going to customize the data that they put in their codex? Yeah, but is there a large collection of tags that are likely common across open source projects? Probably, yeah. So there's a balance, and I don't want to put out a metric that can't be sort of transparently understood. And I think that's probably but I don't know if I'm the only person, like if maybe I just came along believing that these things are what we do, and I might be wrong. But I was in enough conversations about what a commit is 3 years ago that I think standardization is part of it.
Yeah, I believe we have, as metrics go, we may have different levels, different types of metrics, the atomic metrics that we can clearly define, and then we may have more composite metrics. And striking that balance and how much we define each, or how do we present them, because right now everything is at the same list. Maybe we need 2 lists.
I did a little decomposition, I think, if you look through, and I also did a PR of my comments as one document in case you just want to go through that.
I think sorry.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I think to Sean's concerns, I think one of the issues here is that it's not just a composite metric. The SCMS is almost tooling. So it's almost a tool itself, right? It's a bunch of methods that are defined to do this work.
Yeah. Well, there are pieces of it. I mean, I think when you look through my comments in detail, you'll see, I think there are pieces of it that are like, well, we don't really talk about file formats anywhere in any other metric. So we probably don't need to be that specific here, because these things are sort of fluid, and they would cause us to rework the metric. So maybe we don't have to specify that. And then there are other things that are clearly process, and there are parts of it that are clearly atomic metrics. Like it's like I don't think it's not like I don't know. I felt bad writing it, but I felt like it's I think it's constructive, and we answer the questions when we talk in the value group, and I don't think it's a challenge. And I understand. I do know that maybe there has to be some fluidity, but it's what part of that fluidity is defined inside a CHAOSS metric, and what part of that fluidity is defined when we implement it.
Yeah, and thank you for your constructive feedback. I think we need to have that conversation. Thank you for bringing that up.
Sure.
Okay, let's hop along because we only have 3 minutes left. So the CHAOSS release is August 1st. So you need to get your comments in if you haven't. I have not, I will admit, I've been super busy and I have not had a chance to look at them, but I will do that. Kevin, what's the date? The 31st, is that right?
So the review period ends on the 31st. The release itself is going to happen the first week of August. So we basically have about a week for you to address the comments and make any pull requests that need to be made before the release becomes static on the website.
And then I see here that it mentions the YouTube video, of which I was supposed to be doing and I haven't yet. So any volunteers?
No, we
Kevin,
can't really do that till after the release. So you're not behind.
Delinquent yet?
Okay, good. Oh yes.
It's
Okay,
the
awesome.
same. It's the you can't do something you can't do, right? So it's
That's right.
just like Sean
That was
earlier.
Yeah,
exactly. That was really my plan all along.
Yeah.
It's so rare that is the case. Usually it's that I'm late.
So anybody who wants to work on that, let us know. Put your name right here where it says volunteers, and we will be sure to loop you in when we start to work on that very soon.
And there is definitely a final call to action on go and make comments if you can. And if you're in a working group, make sure that you address the comments to your metrics and make any pull requests that you need to make in a timely fashion, please.
I think this is a shameless plug moment of if the SCMS conversation is interesting to you, join us Thursday morning at 10 a.m. CDT.
Shameless plug accepted.
Not so shameless, actually. That was just a regular plug. That was great. Okay, we only have 1 minute. So if our students who are on the call want to drop in their any updates they have, I know that you all are also blogging. Thank you very much. And just so you all know, if I didn't mention this before, we are highlighting 2 students in our CHAOSS Weekly. So we'll just kind of rotate through and give everybody, I think most students are still posting them to the mailing list, their blog posts with their updates, but just in case, we're gonna still also highlight them in the CHAOSS Weekly. And then we don't have a really chance to talk about the D&I badging, but
I just wanted to drop in that we're looking at starting our pilot testing on August 17th for the second and final pilot testing. So that's all I wanted to drop in for now. We don't have much information about it yet. I left an email to email if you'd like to if you're interested in joining on that.
perfect. That's awesome. Thank you, Matt. All right, if anybody has anything else to bring up, speak now, forever hold your peace. All right, I will see you all later. Have a good rest of your day.
Talk to you later.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Guys.